today, 3 Sundays away from, does anybody know what? Election Day. 3 Sundays until Election Day. For these next 3 Sundays, those who have been given the right to vote in America will be preparing themselves to cast ballots. We will attempt to act as a democracy and collectively choose our next leader. Many will vote with hatred burning an ulcer in their hearts. A few will vote with a glimmer of hope, and most will vote with a deep sense of fear, not only of what will happen if their candidate loses, but also what will happen if their candidate wins. There's a lot of discourse these days about how divided Americans are, but we are, in fact, having a common experience throughout this country. There is one thing that almost all of us are feeling, regardless of where we are from, or what we believe, or who we are voting for. And that common experience is a deep and pervasive feeling that things cannot go on the way that they are going. We cannot imagine a future if things continue the way that they are going. This feeling that unites all Americans these days is a feeling that the world is ending. This feeling arises from time to time, in times when we can no longer imagine or predict the future. Because those are things that we love to do. We love imagining and predicting the future. Believing that we know the future gives us a sense of safety. It allows us to make plans and make investments and settle into the placid comfort of believing that we have it all figured out. Except that we never really do. Sooner or later, the world always catches up to us with a phone call that changes everything, with news that changes everything, letting us know that we have been let go from a job that we thought we would retire in, letting us know that someone we love got a diagnosis and the prognosis is not good, letting us know that the relationship that felt safe is not so safe after all. Or we turn on the news, or we open up our news feeds, and we are reminded that the climate is heating up, that storms are following on storms, that people are still killing each other, that fascism is resurgent around this world, that there are wars, and there are rumors of wars, and rumors that another recession is coming. And suddenly our plans look so silly and so small. Suddenly we cannot imagine what the future might hold. It feels in our lives and in the world like the world is ending. This is not a new feeling. It's a very deeply primal feeling. And Paul, St. Paul, who we heard this morning, believed that the world was ending, just as we do. So did all of the other early Christians. It's something that we have in common with them. None of them believed that the world could keep going the way that it is going. They were living through the collapse of an immense and powerful empire. And the empire was the entire world to them. There was no imagination of a world beyond that Roman Empire. So St. Paul was writing to Jews and to Romans and to residents of the cities of Corinth and Galatia and Ephesus, ancient cities which were on the brink of doom. And his letters are all about how to deal with this feeling that the world is ending. The amazing thing is that Paul did not believe the end of the world was bad news. In fact, he believed that it was good news. Because he believed that when the world ends, and when we step beyond the edge of all that we know, out into the great mystery that is beyond it, that is where we come face to face with God. Every person steps beyond that edge and into the mystery at the end of their lives when they die. But Christianity is about the good news that the entire world is passing away. And when it does, when we as a species finally step out beyond all we know into the open abyss of that unfathomable mystery, good morning, that is when we shall come face to face with the source of all life. And that is when this world will end and the next world will begin. Paul wrote to the Christians in the city of Corinth about what happens as we pass over the edge from everything we know into the bright abyss where God is waiting for us. He writes that prophecies will come to an end. We will no longer look for knowledge of what we cannot know. Tongues will cease. We will no longer need to interpret the great mystery because we will come face to face with it. And knowledge will come to an end, just like a tiny ember is engulfed in the bright flames of wisdom and the knowledge of God. And at the end, Paul says, 3 things remain: faith and hope and love. But of these, the greatest is love. So for these next 3 Sundays before the election, I want to invite you to meditate with me on the meaning of these 3 remnants, the last 3 things that remain as the world ends and the world is made new. Today, I want to ask you to think with me on faith, and specifically on the death of faith. We are reminded every day that faith is dying. And I'm not only talking about religious faith. Our entire world is constructed on faith. Our government, our financial institutions, the military and the police, the medical system, our educational system, all of these institutions function only because we give them some amount of faith and trust. For example, we agree not to make our own rules and trust Congress to write laws to mediate our society. We also agree to trust that the numbers in our bank accounts will continue to have the power to obtain the things we need to survive, like shelter and groceries. We agree, we have faith, that instead of having fistfights every time we argue, we can trust the police and the courts to settle our disputes with justice for all. Except that we don't believe these things. Our faith is dying. Less than half of Americans, 43% in 2023, had faith in police. 26%, almost a quarter, had faith in banks. 17% have faith in the criminal justice system. And 8%, less than 1/10 of Americans, have faith in Congress. These institutions are falling apart because we do not have faith in them. And we do not have faith in them because they are falling apart. This is the inevitable doom spiral of every empire which is built with human hands. And this death of faith is not confined to just one subset of Americans. The rot has spread across the political spectrum. It has spread across all of our institutions. The very fact of being an institution is now suspect. It would be nice if people who are losing their faith in institutions could fall back on a comforting faith in God. But you already know that people aren't doing that either. Probably because God in America has been entirely enmeshed with those institutions that we are losing faith in. From the currency that claims "in God we trust," to the schools where children are asked to pledge allegiance to one nation under God, to police with big tattoo crosses on the biceps they flex to beat down people who steal food from grocery stores, to the long line of American presidents who have talked about how much they love Jesus and their born-again experiences, just to get elected and drop bombs on children in Hiroshima and Saigon and Baghdad and Gaza. I can understand why people are suspicious of Christians and the God we claim to have faith in. And at the same time, millions of Christians are losing faith and coping with the terror of what happens when their faith dies. They imagine that if they lose their faith, God will give up on them, that God will reject them or punish them or abandon them. Even though they barely believe in God, if at all, they still cling to a dying faith, too scared to let it go. What would happen if they stopped clinging to dying faith? What would happen if we stopped clinging to faith that is dying? What would really happen if we let our faith die and stopped believing in the gods we do not believe in? It would change everything. Everything we think we know about the world, about ourselves, about life, about this religion, about God, it would all be gone. It would be sucked out like the carry-on luggage from an airplane with a gaping hole in its side. It would change everything. And it would change nothing. Because all that will have happened when faith dies is that we will have stopped believing in the gods which do not exist. The gods that hate us, the gods that tell us we are not enough, the gods who control us, the gods who make us afraid to be happy. Those gods don't exist, and they never have. We made them real by believing that they were real. It's just the same with the institutions that we are collectively losing faith in. The power that they abuse is the power that we have given them by believing that they are real. To stop believing in them feels like the end of the world, because in a sense it is. But in truth, it is only the end of their worlds, which may be the only worlds that we have ever known, like the early Christians who could not imagine a world beyond the Roman Empire. This is something that I know for sure. You cannot lose God, because you were never meant to find God in the first place. God is the one seeking you and finding you. And God never fails. But God will find you sooner if you stop chasing the gods you don't believe in, the gods who do not really exist. When we stop leaning into the faith that is dying, we fall right back into the arms of the true God who loves us to the marrow of our bones. What we stand to discover when we let go of dying faith is that our faith was never the thing that really mattered. Losing faith doesn't make God any less powerful. It doesn't make God any less good or any less real. The entire Bible is one story after another of people losing faith, wandering away from God, and then clinging to things that are not God, and then feeling like the world is ending because the things that they were clinging to, that they had faith in, are falling apart and failing them. But when the last trace of faith is gone, again and again, there is God. Our religion was never about human faith. Our religion is a proclamation that human faith is at best temporary and at worst a corrupting distraction. Our religion teaches that human faith is something that can and will and must pass away to be reborn. And ultimately, our faith was never the point. The point is not our faith, but God's faithfulness. Before you had thoughts to even think of faith, God already had faith in you. And when your faith is gone, when you feel lost and like the world is ending, God will come after you because God is faithful. God will never give up on you because God has faith in you. And God will never give up on us, because if God was going to give up on us, it would have happened a long time ago, long before God came to die as one of us for love of us. But God made a covenant with all humankind through Abraham, saying and keeping a promise that no matter how many times we break that covenant, no matter how many times we break faith, God will never let us go. All of this is to say that when it feels like the world is ending, that might just be the time to lean in. The world that is ending and all the gods and institutions that are passing away with it are all just the wreckage of ancestors who failed to build a better world. That doesn't mean that it won't be scary when the world ends. Doesn't mean that people won't suffer. But I promise you that letting go of the faith that we had in the world is only an emptying of our hands, so that we are ready to catch what is coming. What is coming will not be easy. It will be a time of great and global pain, which is already coming and in fact is already here. Hundreds of millions of people displaced by climate change, by wages of ethnic cleansing, refugees seeking clean water, people losing their right to life-saving medical procedures and reproductive health care. When we empty our hands of all of our dead faith, we are making ourselves available for the world that is coming to us and coming fast. I'm not talking about the dawn of a utopia where everything is suddenly fine. I'm talking about all those who are coming, who will need our open hands. Because the world is never something that comes from outside of us, given to us by elected leaders who have the answers. Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. And it becomes real when we empty our hands to be filled with the hands of those who need our help. The hands of those who hunger and thirst. The hands of those who are displaced and in search of a home. The hands of those who have been left behind and who have left behind horror and despair and pain. Their hands, calloused and gnarled by grief, filling the space that is left behind in our hands, left behind by all the faith that we have lost. Their hands are the hands of God. Hands shaped by pain and loss. Hands that hold ours with tenderness. Hands of great faithfulness. Hands of great faithfulness. Hands of great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Will you please join in hymn 158 in the Tan hymnal? Great is thy faithfulness.